Imagine sitting by a fire, the flames licking the air, casting shadows that dance like memories. Across from you sits an old friend, someone who's seen you through the highs and lows of life. You begin to speak, not as a philosopher or a scholar, but as someone who has lived and loved deeply. This is your story, a story of parenting, of the unspoken rules, the silent battles, the quiet triumphs. It's a story that stretches across the cosmos of human experience, weaving together threads of philosophy, psychology, and raw emotion. Let me tell you about the journey of being a parent. It starts, like all great stories, with a question: what does it mean to raise a child? I didn't think much about it at first. Like most people, I stumbled into it wide-eyed and terrified. But as the years passed, I began to see that parenting is not just about feeding and sheltering a child. It's about shaping a human being, someone who will one day step into the world and make their own mark. John Locke once said that authority is not inherent, but derived from consent. I thought about that a lot. Does a child consent to the authority of their parents? Of course not. From the moment they're born, we make decisions for them. What they eat, where they sleep, what they learn. But Locke argued that parental authority is a form of stewardship, not ownership. We are not rulers. We are guides. Our role is to prepare our children for the day when they can make their own choices. That idea stayed with me, a quiet reminder that my authority was temporary, conditional. It was a humbling thought, one that forced me to tread carefully, to question every decision I made. I remember the first time I read Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Emile. It was like a thunderclap in my mind. Rousseau believed that children should learn through experience, not instruction. He called it negative education, a process of allowing the child to explore, to make mistakes, to discover the world for themselves. It was a radical idea, one that challenged everything I thought I knew about parenting. I had always assumed that my role was to teach, to impart knowledge. But Rousseau made me see that I could do more harm than good by imposing my will on my child. Maria Montessori, years later, echoed this sentiment. She believed that children thrive in an environment of freedom within limits. I started to think about my own parenting. Was I fostering independence, or was I stifling it? Was I letting my child discover their own voice, or was I drowning it out with my own? These questions haunted me, pushing me to rethink my approach, to let go a little, to trust more. But parenting is not just about authority and education. It's also about care, raw, unfiltered, unconditional care. I remember nights when I stayed up, holding my child as they cried, whispering words of comfort even when I was bone tired. Carol Gilligan once wrote about the ethic of care, a moral orientation that prioritizes relationships and responsibility. It's a framework that resonated deeply with me. Parenting, at its core, is an act of care. It's about meeting the needs of another human being, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. Nell Noddings took this idea further, arguing that care is not just a virtue, but a reciprocal relationship. It's not just about giving, it's also about receiving. I began to see that my child, in their own way, was caring for me. They taught me patience, humility, and a kind of love I had never known before. It was a revelation, one that transformed the way I saw myself and my role as a parent. And then there was the struggle for recognition. Axel Honneth wrote about this, the idea that we need recognition from others to develop a healthy sense of self. For a child, this recognition comes first from their parents. I thought about the times when I had failed to see my child, really see them. The times when I was too distracted, too tired, too wrapped up in my own worries to notice what they were feeling. Paul Ricoeur called this one self as another, the idea that we come to understand ourselves through the eyes of others. I realized that my child was looking to me for validation, for affirmation of their worth. And I began to understand how crucial it was to provide that recognition, to respond to their needs with empathy and attention. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt like I was failing, when I wondered if I was doing enough. But I kept trying because I knew that every moment of recognition, every act of love, was shaping my child's identity, their sense of self. Inevitably, I found myself grappling with the existential questions of parenting. Jean-Paul Sartre once said that we are condemned to be free, that we must create our own meaning in a universe that offers none. For a parent, this freedom is both a gift and a burden. Every decision I made, every word I spoke, every action I took, shaped my child's understanding of the world. And I couldn't escape the weight of that responsibility. Albert Camus, in his philosophy of the absurd, took a different approach. He argued that life is inherently meaningless, but that we can find joy and purpose in the face of uncertainty. This idea gave me comfort on the hard days, when I felt lost, when I wondered if I was doing it right. I began to see parenting not as a series of tasks to be completed, but as a journey to be embraced, with all its messiness, its contradictions, its beauty. But it wasn't just the philosophical questions that kept me up at night. It was the personal ones, the ones that dug deep into my own past. Alice Miller wrote about the drama of the gifted child, the idea that many of us carry unresolved traumas from our own childhoods into our parenting. I started to see how my own upbringing had shaped me, how I was repeating patterns I had learned from my parents, sometimes without even realizing it. It was a painful realization, one that forced me to confront my own demons, to break the cycle of trauma. I sought help first in therapy, then in self-reflection. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wanted to be a better parent, not just for my child's sake, but for my own. And then there were the moments of sacrifice, the times when I put my child's needs above my own. Carol Gilligan and Nell Noddings both wrote about the ethics of care, about the tension between selflessness and self-preservation. I had always thought of myself as a giving person, but parenting took it to a whole new level. There were days when I felt like I had nothing left to give, when I wondered if I was losing myself in the process. Gilligan warned against this, against the dangers of excessive selflessness. She argued that care is not just about giving, it's also about receiving. I began to see that I needed to care for myself, to set boundaries, to nurture my own identity. It was a delicate balance, one that I'm still trying to figure out. As the years went by, I found myself facing new challenges. Parenting in the 21st century is not for the faint of heart. The world is changing faster than ever, and the rules are constantly shifting. John Dewey believed that education should prepare children for the future by teaching them critical thinking and adaptability. Maria Montessori emphasized the importance of independence and resilience. I began to see my role as a parent as not just a caregiver, but a mentor, someone who could help my child navigate the complexities of the modern world. It's a daunting task, one that requires not just love, but wisdom, patience, and a willingness to learn. And so, here I am, still on this journey, still trying to figure it all out. Parenting is not a destination. It's a process, a continuous unfolding. It's about learning, growing, and making mistakes. It's about love that has no boundaries, no conditions. It's about shaping a human being, not just for today, but for the future. Sitting by the fire, the flames now dying down, I look at my friend and smile. It's a journey, I say, one that never really ends. And as I speak, I think about the infinite tapestry of parenting, woven with threads of love, care, recognition, and sacrifice. It's a tapestry that stretches across time and space, connecting us to our children, to our parents, and to the generations that came before us. And in that tapestry, I see the beauty of life itself, a beauty that is messy, imperfect, and infinitely profound.